Well, it's a quick one. This is the next project. 79 F-150 Super Cab. You don't see a lot of these. And the seats, try to get a clean spot on the window. Ain't going to happen. See the seats on the side? You sat sideways. Kind of like they do with the S10s and the smaller trucks, but this is a full-size F-150. 1979. But guy, the current work order is first get the engine running. And it did run. It's a 351M, what people call M, but it's a 351 series, 5.8 liter. Yeah, I'll call it the M block. I guess the 400s did have an M. Yeah, that's what was the difference. Anyway, phase one is to get the engine running. Phase two is to do a FiTech fuel injection on it. Trying to talk them into doing a camshaft. These are low compression, but something like an RV cam or something to wake up these engines. These engines, they were good. They were good for these trucks. They just did not produce. They were always south of 200 horsepower. Phase three then was to take this pickup and make it a four-wheel drive. And so that's a bit of a project because this steering box moves. The front cross member goes away because it's in the way. These were still live axles. So the front cross member goes away. And let me think. Oh, yeah, you got to put the transfer case in. Of course, the front drive shaft, and then which can come off of a donor. But then the rear drive shaft. And I found a pickup. These are harder to find, but I found a regular cab pickup, the four-wheel drive that could be the donor. So whether we do the rolling chassis, if we did the rolling chassis, we'd have to make this from a long box to a short box, which isn't a bad concept. Or we just take the bits and pieces off the cross member and the bits and pieces off of that guy and put them on here, just to bolt up the axle and get her up and going. So he wants to step into it, first get the engine running and kind of feel it out. But if the four-wheel drive system goes in, we're going with springs, new springs, and we're going that direction with the whole setup. So 35-inch tires is what he wants under it. Just got done pulling the front end and the engine out of it today. This is the donor. F-150 four-wheel drive regular cab. I'll be pulling everything from there forward off and rebuilding the axles, the hubs, everything, steering, everything. But that's going on to that. Looking at some kind of a patina. He wants it to shine. This is the 351M coming out of it. And it's just a mild build. Basically a camshaft to make it sound cool. Give it a little better bottom end. Not changing any compression on it. Throwing on a Y-end. Oh God, I got the same thing on the Bronco that I built. Now I can't remember. Extreme. Anyway, I don't know. Action Plus. Yes, an Action Plus. A wind Action Plus. And a FiTech fuel system. Set of headers. Four-wheel drive. Wants to jack it up. I'm going to re-gasket the whole thing. Tearing this thing apart. This was just a mess. I think the intake gasket slipped a little bit. Power steering was gone on it, so this whole side was a mess. But you got it pressure washed off, and I'm going to tear it down and just clean it out. and check it out and take it from there. So, just giving you a little update here. Yesterday I spent the day cleaning, painting. Well, actually, Friday I cleaned and painted, and cleaned and cleaned and cleaned and cleaned. But I got all the dirt off of it, painted it, installed a aftermarket cam, installed the Phi-Tech. One thing to know on these M's, and I made this mistake in the past, but the camshaft is retarded on these emission era engines. You know, if you get a Cleveland crank or something like that, you can make it work. But this is a 351, and I degreed it, and cam is retarded 2 degrees on to the crank, but the crank keyway is cut 2 degrees to the side, preventing the installation of an aftermarket cam and getting it straight up. So you must get the indexable bottom timing chain. And realistically, I don't know if it's in this particular year it was 2 degrees, but I don't know if they, that went to 3 to 4 degrees, or what happened. But I knew that the cam was retarded, and I built a 400 in a Bronco, our Bronco, my wife's Bronco, and I didn't index it. And I'm going to go back and index it because it'll make a phenomenal difference on the bottom end and throttle response. But you got to degree it. Now this specifically, we didn't change anything in the cylinder heads other than the valve springs to match the cam. And we certainly didn't change the compression ratio or anything like that. So we're living at that 7.8 to 8 to 1 and rated at 8 to 1. But these were low compression. And so I specifically got a cam with a lobe center, an LSA of 100, and it was a wide one. I can't remember. I'd have to grab the cam card, but I wanted it for sure to operate on low compression. The Phi-Tech will handle the low vacuum that accompanies the cam, but I got a cam that'll work well with lower compression. So it's a 524 lift. I don't remember the duration right off the top of my head at 50, but this customer wanted sound, and this will provide sound. All right, today's the day that I don't seriously have a lot of fun in. I mean, I like painting the frame, but now it's just cleaning and painting and cleaning and painting. We got a transfer case, and I sat and cleaned that yesterday. If you've ever pulled a transfer case off of a vehicle from the 60s or 70s, especially in this case was a farm vehicle, de Maria, you couldn't see a single bolt on there. And so that's pressure washed and a little bit of wire brushing, about ready for now a serious solvent cleaning. But the rest of it is, the steering arm, the backing plates. I did disassemble one hub. I got 2 more good used hubs. Those are from 82 or 83 F150. And the reason this didn't come with one, so I mean, now I grabbed both of them, so now I got 3. And this I'm going to pull apart like I did the other. Get the brake caliper holder separated from the hub, and then paint the backing plate like I did there. That one I had to straighten out a little bit. It looks good for a backing plate, transmission mounts, all that stuff I cleaned. Working on the front axle parts now. Gonna jump on the tie rods. There's the other part. He painted. That was one of the first things that I did because it was sitting on the bench. And I don't know where I Oh, the axle. I pulled the axle apart, and then now he's been washed in the solvent. You know, I cleaned the whole thing out and got the carrier out of it, and got the other hub that was in the wash cleaned up. And I pulled the carrier down. I cleaned the spider gear, pulled the spider gears out and cleaned it. Oh, they're all in the tank, but the ring and pinion are sitting right here. So I got to change the gears. These are 350s, and I got to go with 373s. This has a 370 rear diff. So moving right along. Transmission, cross member, wet paint, and valve covers came in yesterday, so I mounted those up. Did not come with grommets, so those are coming. But that's the process so far. I bolted the steering arm onto the shaft. I got to remember to tighten that. I'll do that right after this video. So that's what I'm working on. Got the 30 protected, and I'm just slowly but surely taking things down, painting them, and packaging them out of the way. So that's the day. Well, the final piece for this conversion is starting to make sense now. Mounting in the transmission cross member and locating the holes in the C-channel frame is not a big deal. Measure and get them in. Of course, I'll have the engine, the transfer case, and the transmission to help me along the way. But what I'm talking about for the last piece is that the steering box came in yesterday, and the frames are different because two-wheel drive has this hump. The width of the C-channel is the same, but looking at this side, you can see that hump. It bumps out about 1/4 of an inch. It is almost as if that flat pad, that there was consideration, because everything before the dog leg kicks over there and this bump out, everything packages right in there, interestingly. And I measured this several times, because if you don't measure and X out and do all that kind of rigmarole, you're going to wind up with problems, and the steering could be one of them. Now, knowing full well that frame came forward, that 3/16 of an inch bump out, I didn't consider to be significant enough to warrant cutting the side of the frame off and moving it in. There is certainly more clearance, and by that amount here, and it does swing a little to the side, but it's more than 1/4 of an inch. It's very hard to capture that. But basically, the box sits in and over the top of the frame. So I had to go in, and you can see the fresh paint, but I had to go in and flatten that. I took that piece, I cut the shape out, removed that piece again, flattened it down, and then welded in a 1/4 inch, or 1/4 inch plate right here into that flattened section, so it took up the gap, and the steering box could fall into its location on the holes that I drilled for it. So it went together very well. I laid the material in so that the inside edge of both pieces met, so that it would be 100% penetration on every piece in there. And of course, it's tied to the cross member completely around the frame, so I'm not at all concerned about structural issues. It mounts up to the holes that I put in using the plate and the so on and so forth, the method that I had explained in earlier videos. but it came together just perfectly. And the true testimony is, you guys probably know this, but there's a little plastic insert on these. Once these are sized, they run a little plastic pin, if you will, through these to keep that length static. That plastic will shear in the event of an accident or something like that, so it doesn't send the steering wheel through your chest if you were to have a front end collision. But then you've got that distance then for accident damage. And I have built cars where I just break that off and let it slip in there. Probably not the safest thing in the world to do, and probably wiser to go with like a very thin roll pin or plastic dowel in there. But interestingly enough, the only thing I had to do was loosen up the 2 half-inch bolts in the column where it mounts underneath the dash and push him forward within the slots. I'm still well within the slots, just enough to get the rag joint, to close the gap on the rag joint. So everything went together. It all is within factory specifications, and very happy with it. Continuing on with the 79 F150, got the transmission mount put in. Of course, I still have the 4-wheel drive frame, so I located off of critical points to identify the hole locations for the cross member and those mounts. As it turns out, the 4-wheel drive frame is lower in this area, and it flattens out sooner than the 2-wheel drive frame. So I had to build some shims. You can see that it's a 1/2 inch in the front and 3/4 in the back. So I made great big 1/4 inch washers and 2 1/4 inch plates, and on the plasma cutter I just blew them out, drew them up, blew them out, and then got all new hardware, all new grade 8 7/16 hardware. Put it all together, put the trailing arms on, just getting it ready. I'll put the extension on for the drag link, and tomorrow, and then I'll put the blocks in tomorrow as well. It's a rough country package. These really look like they're 3D printed. They're phenolic or plastic, but I mean, big deal, But could have had my son print those. It would have costed more though. They're doing them. So anyway, that's where we're at so far. So the stands are free. Finally, a differential's missing. Got the backing pads, the calipers, and all 3 rotors, hubs. Burned up the day yesterday getting this put in. I got it put together. There's a gazillion videos out there on assembling assembling a differential. I wasn't going to sit and put a tripod up and go through that when you can get that information all over the place. So essentially, got that assembled. Nothing's wet yet. Got it assembled. She's clocked in. It's got 7/1000 backlash. It's preloaded. The carrier is preloaded with 6/1000 extra shim, so 3/1000 aside, or however you want to say that, but it's got a 6/1000 preload. She turns 30. All new races, new bearings, 30 inch-pounds on the pinion before the carrier is in. it all falls under the manufacturer's specifications. It's amazing in looking this up how many opinions are out there. But that goes with anything, doesn't it? So in any event, this truck comes with quad front shocks. I don't have the rear set because I don't have, this here is a 4-wheel drive lift kit for a 4-wheel drive version of this car, of this truck. In this case, of course, this was a 2-wheel drive that I'm putting 4-wheel drive in. And there were slight differences on the frame. Just to recap, the center section here, the width and the depth of the seat channel is the same, but the modifications to get the steering box mounted, which included welding up the holes and then re-drilling holes for the steering box, welding up the holes that were in the frame, re-drilling holes for the steering box. When I put got the front end assembled, I have this aftermarket Dana 44 cover, and he's got that embossment on the bottom that says, it just says, if I can get it, Dana 44, nice down low, but it interferes with the sway bar. So I had to fab up, and I'll paint those. I'll just brush those out on the outside edges so they don't rust right away. But I had to make a stack up and bring that out 1/4 of an inch. And with the lift kit, it was too close that way and hit that, and then it hit the bottom of the axle. And I think a sway bar is important when you're lifted, especially. I got the 4-inch extension struts, but they were still too short. So I came down 3.5 inches from the frame, and I just fabricated a bracket that is also trussed. You can see I welded backing plates on his to keep the side-to-side torque, and of course the front to back. It's carried by a couple of 1/2 inch and a 3/8 to locate it on the backside. So that's all in. I got the strut on order for the steering. I have drop pitman is on. I got to tighten that up, and just getting ready to get the steering linkages put it in. I'm gonna pull in the toe. It's a solid axle, so I'm gonna put 2 straight edges over and get the toe in as close as I can at this point, and make sure this guy drops in with the steering wheel on center. Interestingly, the drag link doesn't have adjustment to find center, so the testimony will be, it's right now it's the steering wheel straight up, and that's at the right location on the box. But you know, as far as checking your math, that should drop into there. This drag link should drop into that tie rod. So we're gonna find out. In any event, there might be some minor adjustment, but the steering wheel will be on center. Interesting thing about the Fords is they don't have an indexed column at the top, and I'm going to venture a guess part of that is for that reason, so you can clock the wheel one spline. Anyway, transmission is regasketed. That's a good transmission, regasketed for a 4-wheel drive. The transfer case is rebuilt, all new bearings and seals, everything checked. And I just got to mount that to the original bell housing sitting over there. Get that put in and start to set up the Phytech fuel injection system. And we'll have this thing up and flying hopefully soon. So it's gone together good. Thought I'd bring in for this if you ever get torn down to this level where you've got a flat surface, this housing is a flat surface. Everything bolts up to that housing. You've got your backing plates, your brake caliper hold carriers, and then you've got your hubs, right? And what I did was I just, in this event, Ford uses this, and the half ton anyway, uses this 5-bolt pattern off the spindle. I just washered up, ran a nut in, so I ran it up against the machine surface on both sides. And of course, this is lifted, and I have access on the back and the front. And I roughly set the bubble toward the middle so I would get a good measurement. And so, in this case, I went for a 1/16 of an inch toe in on the front, and I ran my tape measure across the back and got the smallest dimension, right, rocking it until I got the smallest dimension there, put it across the front until I got the smallest dimension there, and dialed it into a 1/16 of an inch toe in. Wheels are pointed straight ahead. So that dropped in. I got the nut on, which is very, very, very heartwarming for me, because there was a lot of measuring that went into all this to get it the location where it needs to be. So I'm very happy, very pleased that that went together. Just thought I'd share that with you. So bouncing back and forth a little bit between the 79 and the 1930, we can see today now, like when I last left off, we were fixing the or installing the anti-sway bar. Now I've gotten into the brake circuit, and in this case, the proportioning valve on the four-wheel drive was actually located about 6-8 inches farther back, right inside of the cab mount, in that pocket inside the cab mount. What I wanted to do in this case is minimize the amount of change in the lines that were used in the F-150 two-wheel drive, which was slightly forward of and almost directly under the master cylinder. About a little less than that, but probably about 3 inches forward. But clearly with the four-wheel drive framing in there, getting into there and attaching the brake lines would have been an impressive move. So what I did was I re-drilled the holes in the frame. Of course, I wound up plugging the holes for the old system, but this T right here was were the locates for the original system, stuck in there, and then there were a couple of holes, but they're long since gone. Those I drilled this hole, and which was a slot, but to accommodate the slot or the key, and then those two holes on a pattern, basically mounted that on. I temporarily mounted the clutch mechanism to make sure that I would clear it, and I have cleared it. It actually is, sits up here. But I mean, it's fully cleared. It does not interfere. It does not interfere with adjustment. It won't interfere with servicing or removing that assembly. So then I ran the brake lines up and up to the master cylinder and everything except for the front brakes, because I'm waiting on the lines. The lines on this truck were dry rotted on the ends. It looks like the whole assembly is like $20, where it comes with with a solid line, the retainers, all that. So, $40, $50, I got the whole work. So I'll get that. I ordered the center line, which was another $20, I guess. Or the supply line, which in this case, also because I had the proportioning valve from the four-wheel drive, this is the two-wheel drive unit. They're the same unit. But one of the front brake line ports on the proportioning valve was plugged, and they just use the other one and run that down. So I'll do that. But when I get the line, I got an OEM replacement, and originally it was fabricated. There was a bracket. Ford provided a bracket for the four-wheel drive that mounted right in front of the proportioning valve. Consequently, the proportioning valve was clocked 180 degrees too on the four-wheel drive. The rear just went straight to the rear and the front straight to the front. And again, I wanted to keep as much of the integrity of the routing and everything in place here. So when I get the new line, I'm going to position it such that I will probably have to fabricate the steel portion of it. But I'm going to take a look at it at that time when it comes, which hopefully is tomorrow. Then I moved on to the steering sector, and again, now we're on the steering sector for the four-wheel drive and the front pan for the four-wheel drive. However, the steering box did not come with the donor chassis. These things are like gold because they're limited number of years that they're provided on the outside of the frame and mounted this way. So what I've done is I took the original two-wheel drive line, which happened to tuck quite nicely on top of the frame. Had that rag under there because they come with fluid in them. But get the speedometer cable out of the way. But that comes and returns back. It's clearance from the frame. Should not have any interference with the power steering pump that's going to set in this neighborhood. And grabbed and just cleaned up the line, the cooling line for the four-wheel drive. The two-wheel drive didn't have this. They just went to and from the pump. I shortened the line, and I'm able to create the little swaged area on the end of the pipe here. So I shortened this pipe, swedged that. This was chopped off because somebody robbed the power steering pump, but there was enough there, so I cut it with a wire cutter or a line cutter, and cut that, swedged that end, and then connected it. I'd prefer to use these types of clamps, but I don't have one at this point. I might change this out to one of those before the build is over. And then this, of course, then returns back to the low pressures or the return line to the power steering pump. So all that went in great. It's all the factory holes, factory everything, and that's as far as I've gotten. On the list of things to do, I got to determine. I believe the speedometer cable, which I have sitting up here, to be out of the way. Number one, number two, to stay in front of my face so I remember. Don't know if it's longer or shorter. Or, I mean, if the two-wheel drive is shorter than the four-wheel drive because of the transfer case, it's got to get back to the back side of that, and that's extended distance from the original two-wheel drive. And if that's the case, I'll have to order up a speedometer cable and install that. But I got that out there to remind me of that hey, don't finish the vehicle without putting the speedometer cable on. I got the original four-wheel drive hose vent line. I replaced the hose, but I got that stuck in there. It just loops up here and then sticks inside of the frame to extend the vent. That's done. Hubs are of course on, and now I'm back to waiting on parts because we're down to the wire here. It's just the things that you don't really think about. I didn't think about the dampener, the shock that goes on the steering damper. I didn't think about, oh geez, what else did I get? Just a bunch of little, the brake lines. I didn't know because I wanted to make sure that I could use what was good from the two bodies. I still have to order the high pressure hose for the fuel injection system. This is going to have Phytech fuel injection, so I still have to order that up and get that wired in. But it's going good, going really good. It's actually looking spectacular with the lift kit, and it looks great. It looks great. Wish you keep the fenders off. But everything is landing where it needs to land, and it's going together just fine. So today I installed the fuel delivery and return system for the Phytech. They provide hose and clamps for the system. I chose to do the post pump filter up at the engine. This is the return. This is the supply. I installed it because we got the the pump on external fuel pump. It needs to be mounted, you know, at the bottom of the tank. So you can see in here, I got it slightly below the tank. I fabricated a bracket. I'm sorry I don't have the light with me, but I fabricated a bracket to mount to the frame, to mount the fuel pump, as well as the pre-pump line, the 100 micron line that routes to the pump. The pump shoots up. That line goes over the tank and into the inlet of the tank on that side. So I got all that run. It's routed up to across the top. You can see the runs across the top and exits out the center of the transmission tunnel. Waiting for the engine install. Here's where it's coming out. I labeled them supply and return so that when I get up to the engine, this will route over to the return line. This will route up to the supply line. I might get fancy, you know, on the firewall. This all needs to be sprayed off, that firewall. But, so everything is ready to go. It does not interfere with any mounting bolts. It's properly routed and out of the way. Anywhere there's a turn or a rub, I either put a clamp on or put a guard on, a rubber guard, a cinch guard on. There was one place where it was right next to the fuel tank, and I put a rubber rail on it. Whole project took about, for this setup, taking out the old vent lines and disabling the fuel line, pulling the sending unit out, installing a return line into the tank. Just reached in on, drilled a hole and then put a on the return line is a bulkhead connector, so I was able to fish that in with the hose on it and stick it through and fasten it up. They provide a pretty good setup, washers with O-rings in them and things like that. It's a pretty good, robust setup, so I'm pretty confident that it's going to work out well. Checked the sending unit on this, and I faintly remember him saying the fuel gauge didn't work on this tank, and I checked the sending unit, and indeed the sending unit is bad. I could simply replace it, but that's a pretty simple job. You can easily access it on the side of the tank on these. We're only using the center tank. We're not using the rear tank because of the switching, and of course with an external fuel pump, we'd have to do a slave pump or something on this end to deliver fuel up. So he opted to just use the center tank. The center tank in this unit is new. The rear tank is original. So that's why he chose the center tank. So, which worked out really well anyway, in the end, as far as running the lines. So, thanks. Kind of a slow day on the customer project, but I ordered up the brake lines, and I ordered up a factory length, just a factory replacement brake line for the cylinder, and this originally went into this top port on the proportioning valve, and the valve was flipped around on the four-wheel drive setup. But I didn't go there. I continued to use the pivot for the clutch and the two-wheel drive setup and plugged the hole. But see, this plug, instead of putting it in the bottom hole where it was on the four-wheel drive, and this routed into the top hole in an opposite configuration, it looped over this way. I just reformed it now to come out, and then I fabricated a bracket, and it's in slack, and of course the thing is sitting up in full droop at the shock extensions. So I got that done today, cleaned up the outboard rigid line to hose for the outboard brakes, and I'm still waiting on those doggone seals. Fuel sending unit didn't work after I plumbed, or as I was plumbing the return and supply line for the Phytech system. I yanked that out. I always do that. If I'm going to go into a gas tank, number one, you drain the fuel. Number two, you check the sending unit. You take an ohm meter, right? And you check the sending unit, and this one is dead, just completely dead. I did pop it off and clean the contacts, put it back on. There's a continuity issue between this post and the interior side. It loses it. So quick shot on the progress on the 79. Had the customer in today. He wanted to be involved with putting the engine in. He doesn't do this kind of thing, but he certainly liked to help, and I think we all enjoyed it. So we placed the engine in. He stayed for about an hour and a half, and helped get that in. And we had a little conversation. And after he left, and I got the headers and started wiring it up and getting things ready to roll. One of the things that he was talking about was what it would look like he wants to keep the patina on this cream-colored truck. And so what I did was I polished the lower part of this door, and the video doesn't pick it up that well, but it does. It peels the rust off, and so I just rubbed it out and then put a coat of wax on. It's already taking on a little bit of dust, but said for a nominal fee, I would just go in and do the whole thing for him. And he said, yeah, he wants to do that. I did notice as I bled the brakes, and I should have, there were some other fixtures on here for a brake system that was leaking. I assumed that was the deal, that was weeping back and going down, but yeah, the master cylinder's bad. So all I need to get a bag, piece of plastic over that, but it's coming together. We should have her running certainly by the next day or two. So break in the cam, going well. Okay, moving right along with the Bronco with the F-150. Got a few things done. Fabbed up a little mount for this. Got all power steering hoses in now, the high pressure and the low pressure. Started on the drive shaft, but I got the wrong universal joint for the back. And for a good chunk of the day, which wasn't really that much, I got the exhaust system on. A couple of stainless steel straight through mufflers. It's a kit, but it turned out really nice. It's tucked up right up in there, you know. So that's what I got done on that. All right, just starting to wrap up the old 79 here. I wasn't going to take the starter solenoid off and to fire it. I didn't want to fire it with everything mounted, but I needed the radiator obviously to break in the cam. I needed that. I could have taken all that off and laid it on the side. I might pay the price. But for those of you that choose to convert a four-wheel drive, a two-wheel drive pickup to a four-wheel drive the way I did, it takes some time. But the customer wanted this on this truck. One thing is that the four-wheel drive inner fender on the driver's side is different. So this is a two-wheel drive fender, but I had to clear the steering shaft and the steering box because on the two-wheel drive it's inside the frame back there, and on the four-wheel drive it's in front. So, but it does clear it. Don't know how the inner fenders are going to work out yet. Hopefully they clear the spring. They might be out here a little ways, so we'll see. But it clears everything. Yeah, you can still adjust the steering if so needed. I am bolted in front and back, and getting ready to fire it. It's quitting time today, but I noticed a lot of the fans blowing because I put box liner on here, and here it's a humidity based product. It's a Rust-Oleum product. But anyway, same stuff I used on the Tempest, or on the Tempest that was years ago on the Chrysler. But I wanted to coat the floors because there was a little bit of rust and some pinholes. So I did clean everything off and hit it top and bottom. And now everything went together well. It's just a four-wheel drive floor plate. Everything went together just spectacular. So very happy with it. Very happy with it. Breaking it in. It's learning. I think we got the cam broke in. I think that's what you're looking for. Okay, we got the cam broke in. I got to drop the oil in it. But today I just basically focused on getting all the other odds and ends done. Put the new, it's all dirty, but it's a rubber floor mat, you know. Got her all cut in. They don't come, you know, because this could be, the mat comes for any car. So it could be a two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, automatic stick. So you have to cut all that in, cut the holes, and then it's too wide, you know, it comes too wide. So I'm just pulling the seat forward. And this here's a super cab. I got it for the super cab. Or what's this called? Yeah. Super cab. So got all that done. That's done. And that was a beach. But anyway, happy with it. Now it's time to test and tune and get the timing set, get everything up to snuff. I did have one little oil leak on the back of the transfer case, right where the yoke is for the rear drive shaft. Just that little bezel that it holds the bearing on the back of the transfer case. And no idea why. Pulled it off. Bearing was fully seated. And just redid it. And now it doesn't drip at all. So, but it's good. It's done. It's just got to assemble the front end, and these are really easy to do. So, still want to get back on that. Haven't done that yet. Well, folks, I'm just shining up the old F150. It's pretty amazing. You can see all the light in it. Original paint, you know, just peppered with bugs and rocks and chips. I'm back to about here, about to the mirror on this, because I got this post here. And you can see, you know, you can see the rust on this side. And walk back around. Well, here, let's go to long shot. And then as you move forward on the truck, it starts to clean up. Yeah, it's got scratches and dings and dents, but you know what? That's a pretty cool look. She takes the rust off the surface, you know, because the rust is just hanging out on the surface, and wipes her down to the metal. So now, you know, wow, Fred, big deal. But the thing is, and I'll just put a coat of wax on it for him. That's what he wants in this round. But a person could actually get into it with something with a little more long range effects. But even a coat of wax every few months, if it's stored inside, going to keep that look and that patina. So from that, to that. And I'm just using rubbing compound that, again, like I said, before I hit it with wax. So kind of a fun project. Well, we're wrapping up the F-150 project. He ordered rims, which a tire store is going to do all the mounting, but I told him I'd be happy to mount them on there for him. They should be here in next week. But this is almost ready for the drive out. I was just waiting on the rear drive shaft. The polish job, he wanted to keep the original paint and just polish the schnout out of it. It does, you know what, it's got the Nixon from 1970, right? Or 79, but she sure did turn out nice. It looks really good. It looks what he wants it to look like. He wants it to look like a truck drove out, you know, driving around in the 70s, and that's what it looks like. One thing that you don't get to see a heck of a lot of these days anymore is a box that looks like that. I mean, this is a 1979 F-150 from up north. Obviously there was something, a piece of plywood or something laying in this box for its life, because that's the original paint. It polished, it buffed down to the factory orange peel, if you can make that out from the lights. I mean, it really looks good.